Good morning. Welcome to the Australian Early Finance Briefing for Wednesday, the 15th of July. I'm Nick Hurley. Starting with something we mentioned yesterday, and that was the upcoming NAB Business Confidence Survey. We had that out yesterday morning. It's come in positive for the first time since February. The index rose by 21 points to +1 for confidence, and business conditions rose 17 points to -7. The NAB economist has said, like last month, the improvement in trading conditions and profitability lines up with our internal NAB data, which suggests significant improvement in activity. He does also say it is important to remember that the survey indicators in level terms are still very weak and business is nowhere near back to normal. Adding to this is the fact that the survey was done before the second round of Melbourne coronavirus lockdowns and the subsequent outbreak cluster in southwest Sydney, which will no doubt have a big impact on business confidence in our two largest urban areas. Another thing we covered yesterday or mentioned was the US reporting season. That was being led by the big banks. JP Morgan has had their results earlier this morning. They've come in more positive than expected. They had a quarterly net income of $4.7 billion US, which was much higher than the analysts' expectations of 3.3. It's still half of what it earned the same time last year. Interestingly, though, group-wide revenue rose 15% to almost $33 billion, and that was due to the volatility in markets. Obviously, the large trading banks benefit from lots of volatility, so that drove trading revenues 80% higher. Back here in Australia, we had Santos, the energy producer from Adelaide, make an announcement that they're exploring the potential to produce hydrogen, the buzz energy source of the moment, out of natural gas at its operations in the Cooper Basin, in doing it in a way that involves carbon capture and storage technology. That makes it what we call blue hydrogen. There's sort of three colours of hydrogen. There's your traditional grey hydrogen, which is made from methane, methane gas, which produces CO2 as a waste product. So it's not really a clean hydrogen. Then there's this blue hydrogen, which uses the same process, but that CO2 is sequestered. Then we have green hydrogen, which is from electrolysis, electricity that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen, and that electricity is supplied through renewables, so wind and solar. Santos has engaged GHD, the engineering consultancy, to conduct a study for a pilot program in the Cooper Basin for blue hydrogen. So we've seen a lot of attention in hydrogen. We've had that from Alan Finkel, the chief scientist, and Angus Taylor, the energy minister, all sort of touting the benefits of hydrogen. Hydrogen really has very it's a niche element. It has to be produced from something. It's not just something that can be naturally extracted. So that uses energy, or even less appealingly produces CO2. So particularly when it's made through electrolysis, there's a huge energy loss in its conversion into hydrogen. It's a lot of, particularly the battery manufacturers, see not much benefit for hydrogen, particularly replacing rechargeable batteries, where there's such energy inefficiencies in that converting to produce hydrogen and then converting that hydrogen either through fuel cells or combustion into usable energy. So it's looking more likely that hydrogen will be sort of used in niches where batteries can't be used. So hydrogen has a very high energy density, so things where they need a super high energy density, it can be useful. And for industrial processes such as steel refinement and those types of things where you can't obviously do that just with batteries. The Economist actually calls hydrogen electricity in disguise. And they mentioned that there's really very niche uses for hydrogen. Certainly, it won't be unlikely to replace electric vehicles because it's in the inefficiency in its production, particularly in the foreseeable future. There's potential uses for it in traditional natural gas networks with a few slight tweaks to gaskets, etc. It can be used to burn in heaters in people's homes, and as mentioned, in those areas where they need steel manufacture and high energy density. But it's certainly not going to be a profound game changer and very unlikely to sort of replace our export earnings relative to coal anytime in the foreseeable future. Looking at the markets now, about an hour after the US has opened, we've got the S&P up 22 basis points, NASDAQ down about 31. We're seeing a bit of a sell-off in some of the big tech names, which have obviously led this sort of recent rally. There's a highly leveraged NASDAQ sort of ETF in the US, which has reports of a large $500 million outflow. So maybe there's some signs there that the big tech rally is sort of losing momentum. Looking at the local market today, we have the HIA new home sales figures out and the Westpac Consumer Sentiment Survey for July. That's all coming up later this morning. And that is your early finance briefing for Wednesday, July 15th. Have a great day.
This podcast is for investment professionals only and should not be relied upon by private investors. The podcast is provided for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. The values of investments can go up or down, so you may get back less than you initially invest.